the fresh aroma of a brand new Terraria world. Unchopped trees, slimes whimsically bouncing around, trying to kill you. Never gets old, does it? But this time around, we don't have a weapon to defend ourselves with. Not just yet. Upon opening my starter bag, I had to begrudgingly delete every single weapon from existence. But I kept the throwing bricks somewhere nice and safe, as we'll be needing these later. So aside from having no weapons, the early game is still the same as ever, slamming my copper axe into the side of some trees to obtain wood. However, if we was going to make any meaningful progress, we needed to be able to deal damage, and for that we needed to obtain a rogue armor set. Luckily for us, the Snow Refine set can be obtained right at the very beginning of the game, and all we had to do was make it to the snow biome and gather some relatively easy to find materials. Oh, and yeah, almost forgot to activate death mode. Anyways, after narrowly avoiding getting our arse beat by the corruption enemies, we managed to arrive safe and sound at the snow biome. I went ahead and looked at the recipe for this armor, to make sure I knew what I needed. And... Flink's fur. Yep, playthrough's over, GG's. So yeah, we have no weapon, and the game expects us to kill an enemy. What are we gonna do, slap it around with our shig? We needed to come up with the most pacifistic way to turn this Flinks into a pile of sludge. Traps could be a possibility, but they'd require activation by the player, so we'd have the blood on our hands. We could get NPCs to do our dirty work, but how are we gonna take a Flinks all the way from the cavern layer to the surface? Yeah, good luck with that one, Chief. There is, however, one hazard that lies underground, which doesn't require player activation, and most enemies are stupidly enough to jump directly into it. That's right, you've guessed it, lava. Although, obviously, we'd have to go ahead and find the lava, and it needs to be a natural pool of lava. We can't manipulate it in any way, shape or form. So with no weapons, and about 3 billion slimes chasing me, I ran for my life and prayed that I'd find a natural lava pool. On my way, I found a Drayden lab, so I harvested that for everything it had. Yeah, these turrets can't do shit when you got blocks on ya. However, I flew too close to the sun and let my hubris get to my head. Back to square one, I guess. I would make a weapon upgrade, but I can't really use any weapons right now, so that's kind of out of the question. And yeah, it wouldn't be long before I got ganged up on and jumped by some corruption enemies. Man, I wish recall potions were a thing in real life. Since it was too dangerous right now to go to the left, I headed to the right side to go on a short expedition. Maybe I could find some accessories that would help me survive longer, mine some ores, perhaps craft some normal armor. However, while I was down here, I accidentally committed murder, so I quickly recalled back home out of pure panic. Can't let there be any witnesses, can I? I tried my luck again to make it back to the snow biome, but then I heard the worst sound you could possibly hear in a corruption biome. Yep, I'm out of here. Let's take a break from getting myself killed and take care of some domestic chores. As you can see, I'm not the best at organising, but I was just using the good old sort things out later strategy. Man, I can't wait for the day I can pelt these motherfuckers with bricks. This is genuinely how anime villains are made. Well, I guess if you can't go over it, and you can't go under it, and you can't go through it, you have to go over it. Look at me now, Eater of Souls, I'm breaking the system. Okay, a Star Fury, come on man. Luckily though, to make things up to me, the game gave me a lifetime supply of amethyst. So we finally made it back to the snow biome, and upon arrival, I almost immediately killed myself. Don't question it. I managed to find an unsuspecting Flinks all on its own, but I tried to subtly convince it into falling into some lava. We did end up making it pretty far, so I tried to pull a fast one on this ice bat, but that turned out very badly for me. Before I headed off this time, I remembered to place down the battery cell charging thingies, and I also crafted myself a set of iron armor. However, this did absolutely nothing to negate my lack of skill. It was like 3 AM at this point, my instincts were dulled, but I had made it my mission to obtain this armor before going to sleep. I played things a bit safer this time, and just made a elevator to see if I could find any lava. Not only did I stumble upon a nice cave house, but I also saw that hopeful orange glow in the distance. Could it be? Yes, lava. I was too thrilled by this orange liquid, however, to notice that I was getting absolutely wrecked by a cave bat. And like a scene straight out of a cartoon, I'd managed to trap the bat inside some blocks with me. Seriously though, the bright flame of hope I had at the beginning was now reduced to a tiny flickering candle. No matter how many times you've been knocked down though, if you can still get back up, that means you haven't been defeated yet. As you can see here, I crafted myself a bed. No, I'm not going to use the bed as a weapon. What I am going to do though, is I'm going to set my spawn point right next to that pool of lava. I made it back to where I was before, completely unscathed, and no cave bats waiting for me. I constructed my little wooden shack and placed down my bed. Now I could kill myself as many times as I wanted to with no repercussions. Now all I needed to do was find an unsuspecting flinks and see if it wants to hop in the jacuzzi with me. There was a bit of a drought for a while, but eventually one of them showed up to my hot tub stream. I built a staircase so his fat body could get up here. At this point, I still had the belief that Flink's fur would be destroyed when it gets plunged into lava, but that belief quickly shattered when I saw this. Multiple Flinkses had actually fallen in here. I just assumed all of their loot would be destroyed, but it turns out that is not actually the case. So I was overjoyed. The very first thing I did upon returning home was craft the armor, and with that, I performed my very first stealth strike of the series. Incredible. I then proceeded to try out my new toys on some undead target dummies, which was fun and all. But more importantly, I can now finally hold my own against a cave bat. So I quickly organised my chests, the beauty of the sort it out later strategy, constructed, or should I say excavated, the ever so underrated bunker house. Oh, and watch this. Man, that shit never gets old. Anyways, I headed down the left cave first as I don't think I'd explored that fully yet. It turned out to be a dead end, but I got myself a shadow wall prepared, which is pretty nice. I went to explore the right side cave this time, and I've got to say, one-shotting enemies with stealth strikes is so much fun. I also picked up a Scuttler's Jewel off camera, which is what creates a spike when I hit this enemy. As of right now, there was two particular weapons on my mind, the Crystalline and the Gilded Dagger, the two of which being some of the best pre-boss rogue weapons you could get. Plus, they were both very easy to craft, the Gilded Dagger only needing 12 gold bars and 250 throwing knives. Yeah, boy, I found another mushroom biome. Oh yeah, and also I wanted to craft the magic storage as well, which requires a multitude of gems, which I should hopefully obtain while I'm down here. But yeah, anyways, nothing really too eventful happened in this expedition. I was just vibing, messaging my friends, you know. Found a ton of diamonds here, picked up a cloud in a bottle. I also found a lava charm off camera too. With not much else to do in the cavern layer, I went down into the underworld to see what was popping. I realised you could actually mine a hellforge without a evil pickaxe. But Satan and his goons quickly caught wind, so I had to dip out of there. Now that I was finally back safe and sound in my little hole, my first thought was to craft the magic storage, which is when I promptly realised my dumbass didn't pick up any emeralds. Out of desperation, I downed a teleportation potion. This one took me right above the dungeon, so there wasn't really anywhere I could go from here. I drank the final one, and this one put me smack bang in the middle of the sunken sea. Not too bad, I could work with this. I dug my way out, but realised I was too deep to find any emeralds. Calamity changes the way gems work by making the higher tier ones spawn at lower depths. So if I wanted to find any, I need to dig back up. I mostly retraced my steps from the previous expedition. At this point I'd already been exploring so long I'd gotten to max HP. Yeah, I know that double kill was pretty awesome, but even better, I finally found a vein of emeralds with the exact amount I needed. 3. Your boy immediately sprinted back home, crafted that storage hole, and plonked it right down next to the crafting thing, whatever, I don't even know what it's called. I'm not one to use too many quality of life mods, maybe a little bit of AlchemistNPC here and there, but magic storage is non-negotiable. I am awful when it comes to organising chests, and it completely takes away the need to do so, so I love every single ounce of that mod. With all of my storage units and crafting tables set up and ready to go, I went on an autism and caffeine fueled crafting spree. I replaced my amethyst hook with a diamond hook, crafted all my ores into bars. Then I finally made the Gilded Dagger, which I'm very excited to test out. I figured at this point I was about ready to take on the Scourge, so I went to the underground desert in order to find the summon. In a claustrophobic environment like this, stealth strikes really weren't holding up very well, and my dumbass was getting hit by traps left, right and centre. But I did find the desert shrine. I doubt I'll be using the Luxor's gift anytime soon though. I got into a pretty good flow down here. I was just vibing, exploring, until I saw this. I'm about to turn this eyeball into a glazed donut. I built the absolute classic Reg W quick platform arena. Shout out to you if you've watched my Double Bosses series. As soon as I'd finished building this, the eyeball showed up. The perfect target dummy to test out my brand new weapon. The Gilded Dagger's stealth strike allows it to ricochet between enemies, resulting in some very satisfying chain hits. At the moment, I was kind of sloppy at this fight as I'd been playing vanilla for a few weeks. But you know what they say, muscle memory and all, it didn't take me that long to get my skills back. although my aim was complete buns. Seriously though, I think I missed at least like half the shots I took. After an exceedingly long first phase, I finally got this guy into his second form. In his second form, he dashes a lot faster, deals a lot more damage, and shoots 3 of the blood projectiles. And also, you're about to witness the clutch of the century. The Eye of Cthulhu's fast dashes may seem intimidating at first, but with smart use of the base dash the player has, it's pretty easy. In fact, if you've ever seen Euromir fight 6 Duke Fishrons, you'll know exactly the kind of movement I'm talking about. Seriously though, this is incredibly satisfying. At this point, the battle was seriously dragging on, but we'd finally got him to his last phase, so there was hope. And I don't know about you, but for me at least, this phase is the easiest. So I can proudly say, we'd taken down the first boss of this playthrough. Stealth strikes might not be so bad after all. Although for this fight at least, I'd say you're definitely better off using spam. Moving on, with the Demonite we got from the Eye of Cthulhu, we can make the Coin of Deceit, which allows us to perform stealth strikes of only 85% of our stealth bar. A very nice passive boost if you ask me. So with not much else to do at this point in the game, I made a sprint to the corruption to craft the Desert Medallion, cause we were gonna fight the Scourge, boy. Except, there was goblins. Who cares about them, I'll just build my platform anyways. See what they're gonna do, their arrows couldn't even pop a balloon. So yeah, anyways, all balls, no brain, we just summoned in this boss. Let's get to it. The Gilded Dagger didn't look like it was doing that much at first, but this thing was shaving off multiple hundreds of his health every single hit. I've got to say though, this fight was going way too smoothly. With the Shield of Cthulhu, I could just dash away from whatever he throws at me. Eventually these spawned in, which I usually have somewhat of a hard time with, but this time around they were fairly easy. Although they did take quite a hefty chunk off of my health. Once the big boy came back, the fight became essentially trivial. Like seriously, he didn't stand a single chance. I've got to say, for this fight at least, stealth strikes definitely held their own against spam. In fact, I'd say they're on equal footing. Anyways, before I could open my treasure bag, I had to take care of the goblin invasion. It was fairly slow paced using only stealth strikes, but eventually I wiped all these greedy f***s off the face of Terraria. Now with some peace and quiet, I could finally check out the loot I got. Unfortunately, he didn't drop the rogue weapon, so I'll definitely come back to him in a bit. For now though, I wanted to build some houses and set up pylons. Don't question my interior design choices. I set up 3 houses in the main bunker, and while waiting for some NPCs to arrive, I fought the Desert Scourge again. Forgot to mention, I crafted the Crystalline off screen. The Stealth Strike essentially triples the amount of projectiles it throws, but I found the damage to be more inconsistent compared to the Gilded Dagger. I was having too much fun with this guy, look at me dancing my cursor around like that. Eventually I claimed yet another easy victory, and this time I actually got the weapon I wanted. The Stealth Strike for this weapon makes it shoot 3 javelins instead of just 1, and they also burrow multiple times, compared to just once with the normal attack. It seemed kind of generic and boring at first, but trust me, there is a place where this weapon really shines. I brought this weapon with me on the trip to the Sunken Sea, and just observe. I had to pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. This weapon was completely busted. I'm not even exaggerating when I say this thing would tear through anything in its path. It felt like I was using a hard mode weapon. But alas, we'd finally arrived at the Sunken Sea. We took down the same boring old clam we do every playthrough. I did pick up 2 new rogue weapons from the Sea King however, the Sand Dollar and Snap Clam. My arsenal of weapons was getting a bit too complex at this point, so I decided to give all my toys a little test drive on the Desert Scourge, to see which ones were worth keeping or not. The Scourge of the Desert was a no-brainer. That thing completely shreds crowds of enemies. The Fishbone Boomerang seemed to be doing the most damage to the Scourge, but on its own it was kind of weak. The Snap Clam dealt nearly no damage, so I'm gonna get rid of that ASAP. And the Sand Dollar did some fairly decent damage, but it was nothing to write home about though. So with that very thorough testing out the way, I got rid of the Snap Clam and the Fishbone Boomerang. Then I sprinted back to the Sunken Sea so I could get the pylon. At this point we'd taken down the Eye of Cthulhu, so we had the Acid Rain available to us, from which we'd be able to upgrade our armor set to the Sulphurous Armor, and craft a new weapon, the Corrosive Bile. Anyways, with the platform set up, taking down enemies was fairly easy, until the fish showed up. I tell you man, stealth strikes were not holding up against these guys. But either way, with enough time we eventually cleared the event, and got all the materials for the upgrades we needed. Making the Sulphurous set was an absolute no-brainer, as it's essentially just an upgraded Victide set with a double jump thrown on there. With my brand new upgrades, I once again summoned in the Scourge just to use him as a target dummy. I crafted the Seafoam bomb off camera, but it's kind of hard to aim and doesn't do too much damage. The contaminated bile, however, is a lot more promising, dealing higher damage to the Scourge and also applying a debuff. Since we had already wiped out the goblins prior to this, I decided to go looking for the Tinkerer, who decided not to show up for an entire 20 minutes. Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? As I didn't have a lifeform analyzer, I thought it would be a good idea to sleep and wait till a travelling merchant shows up. But after about 10 minutes of that, I got bored and summoned in the Eater of Worlds. I figured at this point I'd be able to give him a run through his money, as I'd already done so with the Eye and the Scourge. And believe it or not, the fight was actually looking very promising. I did have a very distinct lack of movement accessories at this point, but it'll be fine. Seeing as all I had at this point were the Hermes boots and Shield of Cthulhu, I decided I needed some more vertical freedom, more specifically, a pair of wings. Even a short burst of flight from these right now would help drastically, but it sure would be better if I had the Spectre boots. Maybe I could find the Goblin Tinkerer in the jungle. No? Okay. Well, I guess I'll just try and buy the lifeform. Wait. Oh, she's following me. Okay. Take me, sweet death. Okay, well on the brighter side, I got a good night's rest and now the travelling merchant's finally here. Turns out, he's selling absolutely nothing I need. I'll happily take that DPS meter though. I went back to bed to pass the time and my efforts were rewarded with a blood moon. Not particularly what I've been hoping for, but I'll take it anyways. With that blood moon fully over, the game rewarded me for my gratitude with a blood moon. I don't like where this is going. Well, I guess I'll farm it for everything it's worth. You can't control what happens to you in life, but you can control what you do about it. And that's another life lesson from Reg. I ended up finding a rotten dog tooth, which makes stealth strikes deal 8% more damage and inflict crumbling on enemies. A very humble boost, but to be honest, I'll take anything at this point. Since there wasn't really anything else to do while the blood moon was going on, I want to have one last look for the Tinkerer. And who do we have here? You're a tough man to find, nutsack. Let's keep you somewhere where I can never lose you again. Oh yeah, nearly forgot. I can finally reforge all of my accessories to Silent. This will give a spectacular boost to the rate we can perform stealth strikes at, which for this playthrough is one of the most important buffs we can get. Having an 8% increase on each accessory will add up to 40% across all 5, and that's not including the extra 2 we get post Wall of Flesh and post Moonlord. Anyways, if you have a keen eye, you may have noticed I've summoned in the Eater of Worlds. I went into the first fight with the all balls no brain mindset, but this time around I actually have the proper equipment to back up my ego. Since the previous fight, I'd obtained wings, Spectre boots, and reforged all my accessories to Silent. Oh, and I started using the Gilded Dagger for this boss, as I realised it was doing more DPS than the Corrosive Bile. At the rate I was going, this boss would easily fall to the onslaught of stealth strikes I'm throwing at it. The boss's speed would gradually increase as its health got lower, but I was keeping up with it just fine. Although I was having a few too many close calls. And eventually, those close calls ended up turning into an IRL meetup with death. I was feeling pretty defeated at this point, but what can you do? I was all out of Shadow Orbs in the first corruption, so I had to go all the way to the second corruption to break some more. And yeah, if I can't be bothered to make the boss summon, there's no way I'm making an arena. In the Calamity Mod, bosses don't actually despawn when they're not in their specific biome, so I dragged this guy all the way to the first corruption, nearly getting myself wiped out in the process. But either way, I made it back, I healed up, and now we were thriving. I'd learned from the previous fight not to fly too high upwards as it makes the boss enraged. And with that realization in mind, I was absolutely shredding the boss. I was untouchable. In the final phase of the fight, it was kind of hard to hit the worms as they were so small and agile. But they don't know about this secret life hack, vanilla players hate me. Except I can't aim for jack, so that was basically pointless. Either way, one final super satisfying stealth strike from the Gilded Dagger transmuted this boss from a worm into a pile of loot. Now, for rogue players at least, the Eater of Worlds doesn't really give you anything directly, but there was a weapon I could obtain from mining meteorite, that being the Meteor Fist. Oh, and yeah, I forgot to mention, spam is definitely better for the Eater of Worlds. I would not recommend doing it with stealth strikes. Anyways, we found the meteor crash site. Whoever made Vein Miner, I love you. With orders of magnitude more bars than what I needed, I crafted the weapon and got the perfect modifier on it. Let's go. The stealth strike for this weapon allows it to ricochet between enemies, which is pretty generic, but holy that damage. and I knew just the perfect health pool in order to test this thing out on. Yep, we were going to take on the Hive Mind. I know we just defeated the Eater of Worlds not 5 minutes ago, but come on, all balls no brain. And plus, did you see the damage the Meteor Fist dealt to that robot a minute ago? There's no way I'm not going to test this thing out. One good strike of this weapon can take out all the minions and deal multiple hundreds of damage to the boss. Like seriously, who balanced this? 1700 DPS? I think we might have found a hidden gem here. And that's not even with adrenaline. Now we have the boss in his second and easiest phase, so I can test out this weapon in isolation. It seemed to be dealing around 150 damage per hit, but sometimes it would hit twice, resulting in over 300. And that's not including critical strikes, or the fact that it can ricochet between up to 4 enemies. Oh yeah, just casually take 1500 off the boss's HP with one single hit. Anyways, the final phase is when things get particularly tricky. The Hive Mind spawns these dark hearts that float above you, and oh my goodness, I just killed them all. I cannot glaze this weapon enough. Looks like the tracking disc finally has some competition. I genuinely have no words. This thing is like the gilded dagger on anabolic steroids. Needless to say, we took the boss out with relative ease. I missed about 5 times trying to kill these guys. Eventually I got them though, and I opened up my treasure bag. Now this boss doesn't directly drop anything rogue related, but it does open up a ton of opportunities for us. Namely some area light upgrades and the all-powerful, the almighty tracking disc. Man, you are an OG if you get that reference. Well, anyway, since we killed the Hive Mind, we can now finally mine area light ore, which will allow us to craft a shiny new armor set and one very insane rogue weapon. So obtaining a butt ton of this ore was in my best interest right now. Now it's big upgrade time. I crafted the filthy glove, but after comparing it closely to the rotten dogtooth, I realized they're basically exactly the same. I crafted the turbulence, a rogue javelin, which, spoiler alert, is absolutely insane. Now for the main event, my precious, the tracking disc. I absolutely love this weapon. I went to go farm some feathers real quick because I didn't have enough to craft the armor set. I put the armor on, taking us from 65 stealth to a grand total of 80, and giving us some nice movement speed buffs too. Okay, well, crafting tangent out the way, I was still riding the high of my previous victory, so I dived straight headfirst into Skeletron. Now, just observe the beauty of the tracking disc stealth strike. It hits all 4 hands at once, plus the head, resulting in some incredible DPS and me taking out the hands within a matter of seconds. With the hands out the way, I tested out the turbulent stealth strike, which excels with single targets. Before I could even check the DPS, I got wombo comboed by a Skeletron. From what I could see here, the homing slashes that trail the weapon do an absolute ton of damage. So ideally, you want the weapon to cover as much distance as possible to get the most of them to spawn. But that doesn't matter now because I'm dead. If I'm being honest, I've never really liked the increased full speed of the aerospec armor, so I put the sulphurous armor back on. This time around, I built a quick platform arena, and took a couple buffs with me, just for extra safety. Once again, the hands were wiped out in a matter of seconds, and I managed to avoid the stupidly fast dash that caught me off guard last time. But I was still getting completely shigged, probably because I didn't have lightning boots yet. My health was running low, but I managed to get to the second hand phase, so things were all good. I'd once again take out the hands within a matter of seconds, and this time I had some adrenaline charged up. But I was pretty close to dying, so I used it to tank a hit instead. We were now on the final and most chaotic phase of Skeletron. Like seriously, this should be looking like stands. But as long as you stay calm and find a rhythm with the attacks, and have a good homing weapon, it's fairly easy. And also, you gotta change your dash keybind, man. Having dash on mouse 4 absolutely slaps, just like I slapped Skeletron. I knew stealth strikes had some pretty niche use cases, but this fight and the Hive Mind have absolutely blown my expectations out of the water. Just like I'm gonna be diving into— Okay, I'm sorry, I'll stop. Besides, I didn't want to go there just yet. The first immediate thing on my mind was to try the Slime God. Once again, the tracking disc excelled here due to there being multiple targets. I wanted to show the Turbulence some love too, but to be honest, I really didn't have the same multi-target potential. Seriously, nothing comes close to the tracking disc. To my surprise, the fight was going very smoothly. The DPS was pretty average, but I know for a fact the tracking disc will be buffed in the second phase, which I was right about, but the sheer amount of slimes overwhelmed me. It was at this point I decided to bite the bullet and take a dive into the abyss, as there was one particular weapon that tickled my fancy. That being the lionfish. On its own, the weapon is nothing spectacular, but on paper the stealth strike actually looks fairly interesting, so I decided to give it a go. I've got to say, even with this being a single target weapon, the DPS was pretty great. The homing urchins from the stealth strike would absolutely devastate the Slime God's health pool, and the tick damage from the weapon itself was just an added bonus. For the first phase at least, I'll say this weapon is superior, but I'll definitely be switching to the tracking disc for the second. That is, if I can get to the second phase. I was still running off of Spectre boots at this point, so I was definitely overdue an upgrade. I already had an Anklet at this point, so all I needed was the Anklet of the Wind for the lightning boots, which I came across with relative ease. With my new shoes, I summoned in the Slime God again. You may be wondering why I'm still using the Fledgling wings when I could have crafted the Skyline wings long ago. Well, that is simply because the Fledgling wings have better horizontal speed. Oh, and anyways, would you look at that, we're in the second phase. And I have adrenaline charged. Observe. Yes, you read that correctly, 2000 DPS with a pre-hard mode weapon. Maybe stealth strikes aren't so bad after all. But anyways, I think it goes without saying that I completely annihilated this guy. The penultimate boss before hard mode begins. And I've got to say, right now, things couldn't be looking any better. Is this even a challenge anymore? Well, silly questions aside, I crafted the static refiner and had a look at my options. The obvious move here was to craft the stat gel armor. After all, it's a major upgrade to our rogue stats, taking us from 65 stealth to 90. Plus, it also grants us double jump, just like the sulphurous armor. So, with my shiny new fit, there was one more weapon I had my mind on. That being the metal monstrosity, an amalgamation of spikes and balls. While its physics are a bit wonky, this is a great weapon for close quarters combat, and the stealth strike only enhances that effect. It had been a while since I checked up on the desert, and my NPCs were dying at... Ah, okay, I see. They can't swim. Well, there we go, problem solved. While I was at it, I took care of some more menial tasks, like buying the snow pylon and the cavern pylon. Yes, I use insta-houses, feel free to shame me as much as you want. So I'd pretty much done the majority of things there are to do in pre-hard mode, so I got straight to preparing for the Wall of Flesh. I took with me a combination of different potions, namely obsidian skin so I don't have to build an arena. I also reforged most of my accessories to warding, as the wall's lasers hit hard, and I'm awful at dodging them. I had made my preparations and found a voodoo demon waiting there just for me. I game ended him, threw the doll into lava, and began the final fight of this video. In terms of my weapon choice, I didn't really know what to use. I gave the metal monstrosity a go, but it was hard to hit, and didn't do too much crowd control damage. That's when I switched to the tracking disc. The tracking disc stealth strike synergized flawlessly with the amount of hungries there were, dealing almost 1000 DPS, without adrenaline might I add, plus I'm using a tank loadout. In a matter of about 30 seconds, I pretty much already had this guy on his knees, although I did make a couple mistakes during the fight. Aside from that though, the tracking disc was the obvious weapon for this fight, and keep in mind, you can get this pre-Skeletron. Let's call back to the question I asked in the intro. Are stealth strikes underpowered or underrated? Well guys, I think we have a pretty clear answer. Stealth strikes are overpowered. The first thing any rogue player should do upon entering hard mode, make a dash for the astral infection, especially if you're a stealth player. The reason being that you can obtain a very powerful rogue armor set within the first 10 minutes, and all you have to do is take out 3 of these guys and mine up some of the monolith. Very simple, I know, but with that we have our very first hard mode armor set. Taking our max stealth from 90 all the way up to 100, making our rogue attacks inflict the astral infection debuff, and also making stealth strikes create explosions. While this wouldn't be the best armor set for spam players, for stealth at least, this is awesome. Next up on our list of early hard mode priorities was to take down the upgraded giant clan. The mollusk husks that he drops, with the mollusk husks that the giant clan now drops, we'll be able to upgrade 2 of our previous rogue weapons into shiny brand new ones. I'll let you guess which weapons those are, but trust me, the upgraded versions are truly something else. Anyways, before too long, we managed to take out the clan, who blessed us with more than enough husks for what we need. We crafted the Prismaline, an upgrade to the Crystalline, or Crystalline, I'm not sure. Then we crafted the Wave Skipper, an upgrade to the Scourge of the Desert. I reforged them all up to flawless. Man, I've missed Calamity's reforging system. Seriously, Relogic, you should be taking notes. The Prismaline Stealth Strike makes it spawn a ton of homing shards. This looks like it will absolutely rip Crygen to pieces. The Wave Skipper's Stealth Strike is more simplistic however, making it throw 3 javelins instead of 1. But either way, this thing looks like it will pack a punch against any worm boss. Combined with the explosions from the Titan Heart armor, this thing will be an absolute crowd control beast. So, moving on, I went back to the Tinkerer to reforge some of my accessories back to silent. There was an upgrade to the Coin of Deceit I had my eyes on, but it requires you to take down one mechanical boss, so not just yet. As much as I wanted to destroy some bosses right now, there were still some preparations that needed to be made. I'd been neglecting NPCs for a while, and we needed the bandit for later, so I made some houses. While waiting for said NPCs to move in, I went to look for cobalt and palladium. But I seriously couldn't find any for the life of me. Maybe the game bugged out when I killed the wall of flesh, maybe I was just blind. But we don't really need it right now. At least not until we can get Mithril anyways. So, itching for something to do, I went to gather the resources to summon Cryogen. The ice biome happened to be covering the Hallow, and I didn't particularly feel like crafting the summon right now. So I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to take out my frustrations on the Queen of Gelatin herself. After all, it would be a good opportunity to test out how my weapons would fare in actual combat. And let me tell ya, the wave skipper at point blank range was absolutely devastating to the Queen Slime. I want to see how quickly this thing can shred the aquatic scourge. With the Queen Slime entering her second phase, it would be much harder to hit her with the wave skipper. However, this would be the ideal environment for the Prismaline. While it didn't have as much damage potential as the wave skipper, it made up for that with its consistency and its homing projectiles, letting my more offensive playstyle take a backseat and allowing me to focus more on dodging her projectiles. With one last burst of adrenaline, I went all out with my attacks, nearly dying in the process, but we secured the victory, so all's well that ends well. Queen Slime doesn't actually have any rogue related drops, so I kind of just did this to test out my weapons, which to me at least was totally worth it and pretty fun too. Anyways, I obtained some shark fins from a totally not modded NPC. Seriously man, I am not farming for shark fins. I then mined up some sulfurous sand. You can probably see where this is going at this point. I made some seafood, and not the kind that you'd eat for dinner. You've likely guessed what's happening at this point, but yes, we were going to attempt the aquatic scourge. I'm saying that like it's a hard thing. Well, at the moment, my arena consisted of only one platform, and I was still using fledgling wings. Don't get me wrong, my damage output was ludicrous, but you can only get so far with such awful movement accessories. Well, taking out half of his health without an arena isn't actually too bad, and plus the bandits moved in now, so that's one less thing we have to worry about. Now I can focus fully on building my quick platform arena. I just love Excavator. Seriously, come on, it's like one of the best mods of all time. But okay, the boss is here now, so let's focus on that. The additional rows of platforms added made it much easier to dodge all the boss's attacks, especially with my serious lack of flight time. And as I'd predicted previously, the wave skipper would absolutely shred this boss. As I got further into the fight, the screen became more saturated with projectiles, and his teeth started homing into me more aggressively. But just like I said with Skeletron in the previous part, just don't lose your focus and get into a rhythm, and everything will turn out just fine. And there we go, the first actually useful hard mode boss has been taken out. Whilst I didn't obtain any of the boss's rogue drops, there was still the acid rain which comes directly after his defeat, giving us the opportunity to obtain another 3 rogue weapons, the first of which being the acidic rain barrel, an upgrade to the blast barrel from the wall of flesh. However, I wasn't too interested in this one. While being slightly more difficult to obtain, there are 2 weapons that drop directly from acid rain enemies. The spent fuel container from the Cragmore Mire, and more importantly the Skyfin bombers from the Skyfins. I found a Cragmire under the water, so I tried to take it out. Yeah, not particularly the best attempt. I came back to retrieve some of my money and I noticed he was still vibing exactly where I left him. I got in a good few hits with the wave skipper, but not before I'd succumbed to my human anatomy. Can't really breathe underwater, can I? With one final attempt, I took him out for good this time, and I got the rogue weapon I wanted. It's not exactly bad to be honest, but I don't think it's going to surpass any rogue weapons I have right now. I still wanted to try and get these Skyfin bombers, and I noticed that most of them were spawning inside this little cave here, but it was kind of hard to survive in such a cramped space. I came back here though, and managed to take out a decent amount of Skyfins, but I completed the event without getting the drop. I crafted the caustic tier and tried again, as I knew from my last rogue playthrough that this weapon was amazing. And eventually, after multiple deaths, RNG gave in, and I obtained the weapon. So with that, I'd obtained every acid rain weapon on my Christmas list. But there was still one more weapon I was interested in. I gathered up some essences of havoc and crafted the blazing star, an upgrade to the glaive sold by the bandit. The Skyfin Bombing Stealth Strike makes it home in much more aggressively, allowing you to attack pretty much mindlessly while dodging a boss, and that is something I love. Although on a huge target like the Aquatic Scourge, it doesn't really do too much. The Blazing Star Stealth Strike makes it throw 3 boomerangs instead of 1, which travel much further than the non-Stealth Strike, which, as you can see here, rip through tons of the Aquatic Scourge's segments. The Spent Fuel Container Stealth Strike leaves a radiated area after the initial explosion expires, which, once again, synergizes incredibly with worm bosses. Okay, this video is turning into a weapon review at this point, so I'm gonna pick up the pace now. I wanted to take down the Aquatic Scourge again, as he can drop a rogue accessory. However, this boss can drop my health like an absolute shig. Like, seriously man, I'd like to say I'm good at this game. I'd like to. Well, these past few fights gave me a good opportunity to test out my new rogue weapons. I found that the Wave Skipper had the most high and consistent DPS on the boss, which is kind of funny considering I've obtained like 3 new weapons at this point. But anyways, with a smart use of adrenaline, I microwaved the boss into a super noodle. He was kind enough to give us the rogue weapon drop, but that's not what I was excited for. I was looking for the corrosive spine. To be fair though, the Scourge of the Seas was putting in some decent damage on the Scourge. And this time RNG was in my favour, I got the corrosive spine. I replaced my rotten dogtooth with the spine. I also forgot to mention at this point that I picked up some dev wings, so no more fledgling wings. I reforged all my accessories to silent again, received my money back via the bandit. Thank you, Calamity. Oh, and yeah, turns out my world isn't actually bugged, it's just that the tier 1 hard mode ores spawn deeper than I thought they would. While I was down here mining, I had my fortune told to me via a Terraria status message. I'm gonna be honest, I thought I could take the twins at this point. After all, I've obtained tons of weapons, got a brand new shiny pair of wings. The eyeballs showed up and we began our long and arduous battle. After some quick analysis of my different weapons, I gathered that the Prismaline would be the best and most consistent option, with the Skyfin bombers in a very similar ballpark too. Things were looking hopeful in this fight so far. We'd already took Spazzitism to his second phase. I once again forgot to mention, okay right look, it's like 3 hours of footage, I'm not going to remember every single minute detail on where to cut things. I bought the counter scarf from the Clothier, and it's a drastic upgrade to the Shield of Cthulhu I had prior. Okay, update on the status of this fight, they are both in their second phase and I'm getting completely shigged by Retinazer. I was low on HP, they were low on HP. As Ken Kaneki says in Tokyo Ghoul, all disadvantages in this world are due to incompetence, which is basically just a longer way of saying skill issue. When you can't do nothing and there's nothing you can do, you fight a destroyer. I took a nice and relaxing trip to the underground corruption to farm some Souls of Night. Seeing as my weapons completely destroyed the Aquatic Scourge, I figured by that logic, they'd do the same thing if not similar to the destroyer. While I was obtaining Souls of Night, I also picked up a cursed dagger along the way. While its stealth strike is very nice, it doesn't really hold a candle to the other weapons I have right now. Once again, I found the Wave Skipper to be the most solid option for this boss, and also for taking out the probes as well. I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling pretty confident in this fight. I did dash at the wrong time and take an unfortunate headshot, but we can recover from that. His final phase can be a nuisance when he starts basically flying. And yes, I did not recover from that headshot. It's okay though, we immediately try again. I may have lost the battle, but I've gained valuable experience. I made sure I was in a better place when he reached his final phase, and there we go. I managed to dodge one of his stupidly sharp turns. I'd managed to jump over the hurdle from the previous fight. The destroyer decided to coil his shigging body around me, but I found an escape route and ran for my life. I made the same mistake I did in the previous fight, and with one final effort from both of us, we ended in a draw. Well, not really, I can just respawn. I opened my treasure bag. The individual mechanical bosses don't really drop anything for rogues, but with our world being blessed with tier 2 hard mode ores, we can now obtain the Mithril Anvil, opening up a wide array of upgrade choices for us, and bosses too. Now, while I was eager to get stuck into all this, there was some accessory upgrades I wanted to make. The Electrician's Glove, a hard mode upgrade to the Filthy Glove, combining the healing effects from the Crimson variant and also making Stealth Strike spawn sparks on enemy hits. Now that's a tongue twister if I've ever heard one. Next up on our list is the Ruin Medallion, a hard mode upgrade to the Coin of Deceit, making Stealth Strikes consume 75% of stealth instead of 85%, and slapping on a 6% rogue damage bonus. There was also a weapon I saw I could craft too, the Brimblade. I reforged all my accessories to silent and summoned in the twins again. Upon testing of the Brimblade, my first impressions were, that's a lot of damage. I saw this eye in half. While it was doing ludicrous damage, especially for a weapon of this tier, its Achilles heel was that it was kind of hard to aim, which as a side effect made it harder to focus on dodging. It was especially hard to get good consistent hits in when Spasmatism was in his second phase. Like seriously man, this guy's acting like I just found a toothpaste. To my surprise, it was this attempt in which I actually took down Spasmatism, which left me with just Retinaser in their final phase. However, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of rusty at this part, and I'd forgotten how to dodge the aggressive homing lasers. As hopeless as things were, I'm not one to give up. I put up a fight till the very end. But yeah, I needed a break though, so I fought the Brimstone Elemental, one of my favourite bosses in the mod. Not because of her design. Maybe because of her design. In all seriousness though, her fight is one of the more balanced and fun fights in Calamity, albeit slightly easy. In this fight, the Brimblade was definitely king, as she doesn't move too fast and erratically, allowing me to get some good hits at point blank. Although even with a high damaging weapon like this, her health pool makes the fight drag on no matter what. Eventually we got to the Brimstone laser phase, honestly such an amazingly designed attack. To be honest, most bosses in Calamity are just like, random bullshit, go! But this boss actually has clear-cut phases and attack patterns. It really makes me hope bosses like the Ravager will get a rework, which is actually happening by the way. Eventually with one last blow directly to the face, we took her out. Sadly, she doesn't drop any rogue weapons, but it was a fun fight nonetheless, so who cares. When I went back to my base, I remembered I could obtain the candle buffs. However, I forgot they removed the drunk princess because of a whole situation, not gonna get into that right now. I checked the wiki and saw that it was sold by the wizard now, so I bought that thing, plonked it down on my base, and summoned Skeletron Prime. Well, I wanted to see if he'd been nerfed at all since the previous update, and turns out, he's still stupidly overpowered as ever. Honestly man, who thought this attack was a good idea? Without the laser spam, this would probably be a fun fight, but as I said previously, random bullshit go. Well anyways, I had to get it over with at some point, so what better time to fight the twins than right now. I made it back to the second phase of ease, but we don't talk about this. I started using these Skyfin bombers in the second phase as it was easier to aim, and this time I killed Spasmatism. I finally figured out the tech to dodging the homing lasers. You need to kind of fall down like this, and then go back up as soon as they get close to you. Works like a charm. Although there are some situations that are just impossible to get out of. I made it back here again, and this time I was extremely close to defeating them. I am kind of a professional at dying when the boss is on 1 HP, so we'll have to see how this plays out. Luckily, against all odds, the battle ended in my victory. Once again, no rogue items from the treasure bag, but more importantly, we now have access to tier 3 hard mode ores. So I promptly mined a hefty chunk of adamantite and titanium. At this point in the game, cryonic ore can be mined, but we haven't actually taken down Cryogen yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Cryogen is also one of my favourite bosses in the mod, as just like the Brimstone Elemental, it doesn't throw everything at you at once. In terms of weapon choice, a good homing weapon is usually the most effective against this guy, so I used the Skyfin bombers. They're not particularly great in terms of damage, especially on a small and fast moving target, but what can you do? After a relatively chill first few phases, Cryogen had now entered his derp phase, which is where the fight can become especially chaotic, especially to a new player. However, with some well-timed dashes and a bit of skill, you can easily die? Okay, that was kind of embarrassing. I guess I'll be needing my quick platform arena. Let's see if I can construct it while this guy shakes me in the background. Yeah, okay, I think that's about as far as I'm gonna go. With the platforms, I was able to dodge most of Cryogen's attacks by just moving horizontally, and occasionally jumping. At this point, I had the fight in the bag. The quick platform arena never fails me, and with the final hit, shit. Okay, to the multiple thousands of people that are gonna see that spectacular failure, I'm talking about you, yes you, let's just forget that ever happened, okay? I'm wiping your memory. And boom, first try, there we go. I remembered the Archmage exists, so I bought some ice stars from him, as I do remember their stealth strike being particularly good. And while being a slightly lower tier than my current weapons, it was still holding up very nicely. Oh yeah, I'm not even gonna lie, I completely forgot to mine cryonic ore at this point. I was just too focused on taking down boss after boss. But knowing that Skeletron Prime is just incredibly imbalanced, I decided to proceed with my only other option at this point. The cow clone. Well, technically, this boss is on the same tier as Plantera. With a good pair of wings, I personally find it easier than the mech bosses. Plus, she has some consistently good drops for all classes, especially from the brothers. I'm gonna be so real, every single Calamity playthrough I do, I fight her after the first mech boss. If I could, I'd fight her as soon as I beat the wall of flesh. Anyways, here comes the first bullet hell phase, which is pretty much just a B-Tech version of the Supreme Calamitas one. If you move too far in one direction, the projectiles will speed up, but other than that, it's easy. Now for the brothers phase, which I'm the most excited about by far. I'll let you guess why. Anyways, the Brimblade Stealth Strike absolutely shredded these guys. Like seriously, there was no competition. Next up is the Soul Seeker phase, which I promptly destroyed with the Wave Skipper. It's a lot of fun having a wide arsenal of weapons, letting you use each one for a different purpose. Now moving on to the final bullet hell phase. It's fundamentally the same as the first one, but this time with circular blasts thrown in. It's very easy to get tripped up by these things, but I had just become one with the game at this point. Like seriously, the luck is insane. Anyways, the second bullet hell doesn't last too long, and I promptly microwave her with adrenaline. Not even gonna lie, I was pretty hyped that I got that on my first try. Sadly though, she doesn't have any rogue drops, so I did this all for nothing. Or did I? Let's go back to the fight again. All of you more seasoned Calamity players will know what I'm after. Oh wait, no, don't leave that in, cut that! When you kill a boss in Terraria, you'd expect only the boss itself to drop loot, right? In the Calclone fight, and the Calclone fight only, the two brothers actually drop items, one of which being the Crush Saw Crusher. This weapon is very overpowered. We're talking makes all of our other weapons obsolete, overpowered. The Stealth Strike for this weapon throws out 5 bouncing, homing claws, which can do multiple thousands of DPS. Let's just say, this thing ticks all the boxes of being a great weapon. Still not great enough for Skelly Prime though. Well, at this point I remembered I could get Cryonic Ore, which is why I thought Cryogen in the first place. I considered making the Daedalus Rogue Armor set, as it had more maximum stealth. But I think the Titan Heart armor is just better at this point. The explosion effect is just really OP. I made some crystal piercers with the cryonic bar I had, but to be honest, they're not that good. I also considered making the ornate shield, but to be honest, I prefer the dodge from the counter scarf. To try and help me dodge some of Skelly Prime's ludicrously unfair attacks, I bought a Rod of Discord from the wizard. I nuked most of his health with some well-timed adrenaline, then used the Rod of Discord on his first skull attack. This worked flawlessly. But however, the cooldown is slightly too long to use it for each cycle. That didn't matter though, I was about to take him down. Until I choked on 500 HP. Yikes, that one hurt, man. Well, if you can still get back up on your feet, you haven't been defeated yet. No matter how many times I died to this guy's bullshit attacks, I knew I'd kill him at some point. I just needed the perfect attempt. And there we go. The counter scarf dodge really just saved me in that moment. Which makes me glad I didn't make the ornate shield now. So, with all 3 mechs defeated and Calclone 2, it's time to challenge Plantera. To be honest, with the way that things were going, I was feeling very confident going into Plantera. But before that though, there were some upgrades I could make, now having all 3 mechanical boss souls and hallowed bars. I crafted the Spear of Destiny, which happened to have Flawless already on it. The Stealth Strike for this weapon shoots out a single high velocity lance with a pretty huge explosion radius when it hits an enemy. Plus, it can go through blocks, so I know this is going to become a staple within my arsenal. Next up, after obtaining some holy water, I crafted the Exorcism. While the Stealth Strike for this is very nice looking, having a higher explosion radius and summoning falling stars on hit, I doubt I'll be using it too much, as it is a nightmare to aim. Now, I was planning to make the Angel Treads, but at this point I'd completely forgotten and just went straight into Plantera. All balls, no brain, no arena, and no buffs. A recipe for disaster. But I was about to cook up a storm. Unfortunately, I couldn't really use the Crush Saw Crushers to damage her, as she was hiding within blocks for most of the first phase. But luckily I crafted that Spear of Destiny, so things were all good. My DPS was low, but it sure was consistent. I've had a lot of experience with Death Mode Plantera. Yeah, just ignore the fact that I got hit there. I even fought 2 of them in my double bosses challenge. So I could already predict the outcome of this fight with a 99% accuracy. My perfect flawless victory and her turning into a salad. Even with my low DPS, the amount of times I was charging adrenaline was more than making up for it. Now we've made it to the second phase, where I was expecting some trouble, but the absolutely humongous explosion radius of this thing took out multiple of those, don't even know what they're called, tentacle things, at once. In her second phase, she also started moving in a wider angle, which meant I could get some very nice hits in with the Crush Saw Crasher. I was dodging her every attack with the elegance and style of a fine distinguished gentleman, while she was stumbling around like me in my first video. And yeah, I think it's safe to say at this point, she turned into another tick on my boss checklist. Stealth strikes really are insane. So, with the plant out of the way, a ton of new upgrade options have opened up for us. The bandit now sells the 2 glove accessories, and I had my eyes on the glove of precision specifically. It gives a very generous boost to damage, crit chance, and velocity, albeit at the cost of attack speed. But in this run at least, attack speed doesn't even matter, so we have all the more to gain. Those of you with a keen eye may have noticed that there is a solar eclipse happening right now, and since we took down Calclone earlier, we can obtain solar veils, a crafting material that once again allows for even more OP rogue weapons, and this time a new rogue armor set. So I took full advantage of the natural solar eclipse spawn, died multiple times, and then promptly crafted the Umbraphile set. I did a DPS test with each of the armor sets equipped. While the Titan Heart's DPS was highly varying, I found it evened out at around 4000. The Umbraphiles was much more disappointing though, barely exceeding 3000 DPS at point blank. I conducted another mini test with the King Slime, and found that the Titan Heart armor made much shorter work of him. While it was kind of disappointing having my new armor set be worse than my current one, I guess it really does go to show how overpowered the Titan Heart armor is for stealth players. I used the remaining solar veils to craft some weapons, and let's just say they did not disappoint. Okay, enough hypotheticals and ifs and buts. It was time to march forwards in terms of progression. We were going to take on a new boss. The Leviathan. And I guess Anahita as well. While I wasn't too interested in fighting this boss, it does come directly after Plantera in the boss checklist, so I thought I may as well. And I fought 4 of these guys in my double boss this series, so fighting just one can't be too hard. Obviously, it didn't take me very long to realise the Crush Saw Crasher was going to be the best weapon for this fight. In fact, it was taking down the Leviathan so quickly, Anahita already showed up. Yeah, this fight's going to be a breeze. Well, after a humiliating defeat like that, I guess the only thing you can do is get back up and try again, hoping for the best. It took almost no time to get back to where we were. The only issue at hand though was that her attacks were stupidly hard hitting. In all fairness though, I don't have any life fruits or a blood orange yet, so I can't say much. Moving on, I focused a bit harder this attempt and we managed to take down Anahita. So now the only obstacle in our way is the big guy himself. Or girl, Leviathan's a she I believe. Gender identity of this terrifying creature aside, fighting just her on her own is fairly easy. All you have to do is just make sure not to get tripped up by the giant bubbles, as those things can literally two-shot me right now. And there we go, with the Leviathan defeated we now have access to the upgraded Abyss, and also her treasure bag I suppose, and oh no wait, we actually got the community. And her rogue weapon? Jackpot. While the brackish flask isn't exactly my cup of tea when it comes to rogue weapons, I can still see this being useful for crowd control. I suppose for now I'll ride this wave of hype and move straight on to the very next boss, Astrum Aureus. Astrum Aureus used to be one of my least favourite bosses in the entire mod, but I'll say I've grown to like him a lot. The only reason I didn't like him in the first place is because I never understood his attack patterns. But I suppose the fun with fighting bosses comes with the satisfaction of learning their patterns, adapting, and using that knowledge against them. Just like always, the Crush Saw Crasher was working absolutely flawlessly against this boss. I will say at this point, my DPS felt like it was lacking slightly, but it was still consistent, and keep in mind this boss has a very high health pool. We eventually took him to his second phase where he shoots out these annoying orbiting guys and a ton of projectiles into the sky. Man, dodging with the Rod of Discord is the most satisfying thing. This shit like ASMR for my eyes. Okay, well, the boss's health was dropping like it's hot, I was hardly getting hit, things were going all around brilliant. Although the final phase of this fight is a bit chaotic in particular. Aureus jumps about 12 billion times while retaining those bullet-held projectiles in the sky, and what's this? I'm dead. Well, you can't expect things to go perfectly the first time around, so I picked myself back up. This was going to be the attempt I think I'll swap out my glove of precision for the amalgamated brain. That dodge is going to come in really useful. I'm in that middle ground where I'm not getting hit too much, but just enough to slowly kill me. So in theory, this dodge should be the perfect solution. I was at full health and he was at a fraction of his, but keep in mind this is how the first fight ended. This guy was jumping up and down like a 5-year-old when it's bedtime. Like seriously, look at this fella go. Anyways, with one last burst of adrenaline, we sung him a lullaby, tucked him in, and turned the lights out. From the treasure bag, we got nothing, but the treasure bag wasn't what I'm interested in. If you saw my most recent video, you will know exactly what I'm looking for. Allow me to introduce to you the Stellar Knife, the weapon that, in my first stealth playthrough, carried me all the way up to Moonlord. At this point, I was still missing out on some new Abyss upgrades and another weapon or two you could get from Aureus, but just watch this golem fight, or should I say, massacre. The stealth strike for this weapon throws out 15 floating knives that stop and then home aggressively onto enemies. Kind of like Dio's knives from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, although I've never watched that anime. Now, this weapon seems pretty great on its own right, it's pretty mindless to use, it automatically homes into enemies. Surely its DPS would be a bit lower compared to the harder to use weapons, right? Well, you see, this weapon is kind of like the Flame Runner in Mario Kart Wii, like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood in animes. It just takes everything the other on-tier weapons do, and does it miles better. It's pretty needless to say that this weapon is going to stay in my arsenal for a long time. Now, Golem is a pretty hefty milestone, more so in Calamity than in Vanilla. His defeat grants us many more paths we can take and upgrades we can choose from. The first of which I wanted to explore was the new jungle enemies, which now drop Plague Cell canisters, which have 2 craftable rogue weapons and also allow us to summon the Plaguebringer Goliath. Pretty interesting, but I remembered there's something more important that I should be taking a look at. With the Pixor dropped from Golem, we can now mine Scoria ore in the Abyss, giving us access to once again a multitude of weapons, accessories, and a new rogue armor set. Let's just hope this one's better than the Titan Heart. I crafted the full set of rogue hydrophobic armor. I couldn't give it a proper test at the moment as there's a blood moon going on, so I went to farm some Souls of Night. The King Slime method always works like a charm. Anyways, the blood moon had finally passed, so I got to testing out the new armor sets, standing point blank against the target dummy and holding left click. With the Stellar Knife, the Titan Heart armor averaged out about 5,000 DPS. Now let's see what the hydrophobic, holy sh, that's 11,000 DPS. Well, I think we have a clear winner here. It felt refreshing to finally have a new upgraded set of armor. Also, while I was mining Scoria ore in the Abyss, I also farmed some depth cells and Luminel, allowing us to craft the Abyssal Mirror, which grants us improved stealth generation and a dodge, compared to the amalgamated brain with just a flat damage increase. So I replaced the brain with the mirror, as having extra damage doesn't really do too much when you're only using stealth strikes. The reason being, in simple terms, is that the damage bonuses from accessories aren't multiplicative with the stealth damage bonus. At this point I still hadn't made the Asgard's Valor, which will be a necessity for the Plaguebringer Goliath fight. So I went on a short crafting spree and obtained this beautiful item. Now with the preparations in place, we can proceed with our first attempt against the Plaguebringer Goliath herself, which is one of my favourite bosses in the entire mod, but it has one fatal flaw. This has more lackeys than a mafia boss. Like seriously, look at this, how are you meant to focus on her attacks when you've got a bunch of these chasing you? Plus, with the way stealth strikes are, you can't really focus on attacking the boss when you've got the minions chasing you. So yeah, my first attempt ended in spectacular failure. I knew fighting the Plaguebringer was going to be an uphill battle, so I decided to test the waters with Duke Fishron instead, who is, in my opinion, a much fairer fight. Now, I knew as an objective fact the minute I spawned in this boss that the Stellar Knife would be the perfect weapon to take him down. And believe me, this weapon would never give me up nor let me down. Before long, we'd brought him to his second phase, which stays relatively untouched by Calamity. He still performs his 3 longer dashes, followed by either homing bubbles or the Sharknadoes. Now for the third and final, but also easiest phase. I see a lot of people struggling with this phase, but in all honesty, it's literally just about timing. And rebinding your dash key helps a ton too. After a certain health threshold, he will start dashing infinitely, which I'll admit caught me off guard here. But I took him down without any problems, and I also got the Fishron wings on my first try. There was a rogue weapon obtainable from him, albeit with a 10% drop chance, but I decided I'd farm for it as the Duke fight is an absolute cakewalk. Only 3 attempts, not bad at all. Now, I still had my beef to settle with the Plaguebringer Goliath, so I immediately went and summoned her in. Although, I'm not too sure now this weapon was the right fit for her, not gonna lie. I gave it another go, and this time got significantly further. I'd even managed to bring her to her second phase, which is when she starts doing this attack. It's easy enough to dodge on its own, but if you get a bad cycle, you're toast. I actually got her really low this time too. At this point, I found the Crush Sword Crusher to be the most efficient in taking out the minions. However, its DPS wasn't too great, considering that it's a pre-Plantera weapon after all. You may be wondering why I'm not using the Stellar Knife that I glazed so much earlier. And I'll be honest, the way that the projectiles stop in midair made it hard for them to actually home in on the boss. At the cost of DPS, the Crush Sword Crusher homes in much more aggressively onto enemies, which is why I used that instead. Wait, hold on a minute, the Fantasy Talisman is actually doing a lot of damage. I was able to manipulate its trail of homing souls to constantly hit the Plaguebringer, which would simultaneously take care of the minions as well. I found its DPS to be on the low side, but it made up for that with its ease of use and consistency. However, I still died. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get past the second phase on this boss. So, I gave up on the Plaguebringer for now, in favour of challenging a different boss. The Ravager. In all honesty, there isn't really much to say about this boss, not until he has his rework at least. My Stellar Knives were once again ripping him to shreds, as always. Like seriously, I wasn't joking when I said these things are viable up until Moonlord. Anyways, we've now took him to his second phase, or should I say the run in a straight line phase. Seriously man, I can't wait to see what they do with this fight, especially considering it will be post-Providence. It's just kind of awkward where it is right now in terms of progression. But either way, we took him down, got ourselves a rage upgrade and a brand new rogue weapon. So definitely no complaints on my part. Still can't take down the Plaguebringer though. Okay, well you know what, f the Plaguebringer, let's just try Lunatic Cultists instead. I'm not spending 100 attempts on that boss just to get some mediocre rogue weapons, it'll probably be outclassed within like 10 minutes. But anyways, the Cultist fight is always fairly... I made slightly more of an effort to dodge this time, and with some adrenaline powered stealth strikes, I got him down pretty low. Things were looking very hopeful this time. But I got caught in a bad spot. This time I tried using the Fantasy Talisman, and I also remembered I had an arena in the Sulphurous Sea. The journey to get there was very smooth enough that I charged up some adrenaline, and before long we had arrived, with the cultist only sitting at half of his health now. Soon enough that half would turn into a quarter, and my attempt would turn into a failure. I was super close though, so I knew this would be the session that I beat this guy. The Fantasy Talismans were doing some incredible work. Under 20,000 health now, and man, it's always them ancient light attacks that get me. Still though, I'm not giving up, we were getting closer and closer with every single attempt. Under 10,000 now, and I was pretty low on health myself. I kind of messed up here and accidentally spawned a Phantasmal Dragon, but the cultist was so low now, and with one final stealth strike, we took him out. Another milestone of progression achieved, which moves us forward to the final chapter of this video. It was finally time to challenge the Moonlord. Well, it's just not that dramatic, is it? Well anyways, let's move straight on to the pillars then. Now the pillar you choose first doesn't particularly matter for rogue players, but what does matter is you picking up every meld blob you see, as they are essentially just rogue fragments, plus they drop from every type of pillar too. While it was starting to show signs of aging, the Stellar Knife was still holding up flawlessly, see what I did there, against the Vortex pillar, and within a short amount of time, I had it taken down. So, let's see what you can make of these meld blobs. The first thing I remembered almost immediately from a previous playthrough was the Dark Matter Sheath, a direct upgrade to the Ruin Medallion which allows stealth strikes to be performed at only 50% of your maximum stealth, which at this point is probably even more essential than having wings. Doubling the rate you can perform stealth strikes, increasing the damage and also increasing your stealth regen. Like, come on, that's insane. With the remaining meld blobs I had left, I crafted some Shards of Antumbra, a consumable javelin type weapon, and then moved along to the next pillar, the Solar Pillar. Since there's nothing we can actually craft with the fragments, not until taking down the Moonlord, I'm just gonna skip through these as they were mostly the same old thing. I'd plonk my ass down and spam stealth strikes, get myself killed a few times, and then inevitably destroy the pillar. At least now I had enough meld blobs to craft the next weapon. The Star of Destruction, a huge slow moving disc that explodes into homing shards based on how many enemies the disc hit. I used it to absolutely destroy the Stardust pillar. Now at this point I could just take down the Nebula pillar and face the Moonlord, but there was one more boss I wanted to take out. With a Titan Heart in hand, you offer it up to the Astral Beacon, at nighttime of course, and then for some reason it creates this wormy f*** out of absolutely nothing. Weird, huh? But he has some good loot, so we're going to be fighting him anyways. Now, in my previous stealth playthrough, the Star of Destruction completely shigged him, so that's going to be the weapon of choice I guess. And man was I not wrong, this thing had already taken him to his second phase. You see, the first phase is just to trick you into a false sense of security. Now he's going to split into 2 worms, and it's going to be a decent bit harder. But if you've seen my double bosses videos, I had to fight this guy on 10 times HP, so needless to say, I've got the experience and skill required for this fight. I wish I was joking as well, that fight actually took 45 minutes. It's also how I found out, when he enrages during the day, he actually unenrages when it's nighttime again. So yeah, while the video quality is questionable, you should probably go and watch my Double Bosses series, as it's actually pretty interesting. I don't think anybody's actually covered that challenge in Calamity, aside from Gungnir, but that was vanilla. We're talking about Calamity here. Okay, now I seriously need to stop waffling. We're in the 3rd phase of Astrum Deus when both worms are at half of their HP. It's an absolute projectile spam bullet hell. Plus, you've got the 2 worms coming at you like freight trains. You've got to watch out and make sure you dash at the right time. But yeah, these guys were absolutely nothing to me, and the overwhelming power of my stealth strikes. We'd taken down the first worm, I nearly got myself killed, but I'd return to full HP, and shortly after, the second worm would fall too. Now, Astrum Deus drops a rogue weapon, but I didn't get it. But that's fine though, because we can mine Astral Ore now, which will grant us access to another rogue weapon. An upgrade to one of our previous weapons. Oh, I need more Stardust. The Radiant Star, an upgrade to the Prismaline which we obtained in the very beginning of this video. I didn't realize it yet, but notice how the explosion spawns falling stars? Get ready to witness the star shower of a lifetime. Keep in mind, I didn't know this would happen at this point. I summoned him back in to have another chance at getting that rogue weapon, and oh my goodness. Did they even test this thing? No, like, I'm serious, did they? Well, it looks like we're in the 2nd phase already. If you can trigger the star shower while they're going vertically, it can absolutely shred through their health. This is what I play Calamity for, man. Seriously, tell me, what other mod does this? I'm not even mad that I died here, this thing's just too funny. But anyways, on the next attempt we did actually take him out. Still no rogue weapon though. I'm just gonna leave this in because of how satisfying this was. And still no— oh wait, no, we actually got the rogue weapon, let's go. I'd thought I'd challenge my old enemy here, the Plaguebringer Goliath. Perhaps my new weapons could help take her down. I'll admit the Radiant Star was giving her a good hiding. In fact, I even got her to her 2nd phase. But I was just still too bad at the game. Well, I guess there's nothing else to do except take down the Moonlord now. He'd be a good health pool to test out the Regulus Riot on. So let's do this. The Regulus Riot is one of those lazy weapons which you can just throw in one direction and pretty much every hit will land. Its long range is— oh sh*. It's long range, it's homing, it does decent damage. It's the perfect weapon for if you want to focus on dodging. So I did exactly that and let the Regulus Riot chip away at the Moonlord's health slowly but surely. This time I remembered to dodge the Death Laser. I don't know about you, but in my humble honest opinion, I think Calamity Expert Death Moonlord is easier than normal Moonlord in vanilla. Calamity makes his eye beams no longer predictive, which in turn makes them at least 100 times easier to dodge. And another brilliant change Calamity does is that the True Eye of Cthulhu's no longer fire their death lasers, which is an incredibly unfair attack which can only be dodged by being super far away from the boss. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Terraria to bits, but some of the boss designs are just kinda stupid. We was making some brilliant progress on Moonlord. In fact, we was about to take him out and then— bro, why didn't I dodge that? Okay, let's try that again. We made it back to the core phase with relative ease, and this time I was a lot more focused. All I had to do was spam the Regulus Riot and win. Seriously, this weapon is amazing. Okay, just throw the weapon and don't get hit. He must be on like 4 HP now. I'm gonna peel this guy open like a banana and open him up like a tin of beans. Heh, you fool. This isn't where my journey ends. This is just the beginning! Okay, yay, we killed the Moonlord, let's go. So, since we took down the Moonlord in the previous episode, we can now finally use the Celestial Onion, granting us an extra accessory slot, bringing us up to a total of 7. I didn't really know what to fill that extra slot with, so I just used the Ethereal Extorter. Anyways, it was time for an absolute shig ton of upgrades. I mined up the newly generated Luminite Planetoid first, as we'll be needing a ton of that stuff. Man, our Excavator just never gets old, does it? It's so good. With my 50,000 Luminite, my first immediate thought was to craft the Empyrean Armor, which is essentially just the rogue variant of the vanilla endgame armors. and just like the Solar or Stardust armor, it packs a solid punch. Next up, I replaced my Angel Treads with the Moonstone Crown, which increases rogue velocity, summons lunar flares on stealth hits, and trails your rogue weapons with homing lunar sigils. Not bad at all if you ask me. Oh, and I also bought the Celestial Reaper from the Bandit, which used to be one of my favourite rogue weapons in the mod, but I'm not sure how it holds up to this day. I crafted the Elemental Disc, an upgrade to the Samsara Slicer. I doubt I'll find very much use in it though, as the Samsara Slicer wasn't very good either. Anyways, you may be wondering at this point, why am I in the dungeon? Allow me to show you a tradition that has stuck around since before even the Drayden update. When Providence has just given you too much trouble, you pull a pro gamer move and fight Poltergeist instead. Yeah, this was something I literally used to do in every single Calamity playthrough, and still do to this day. But don't worry though, no sequence breaks in this run. I'm gonna be stashing away the treasure bag until I beat Providence at the very least. Well, that is, if I even take down Poltergeist. But I'm not even joking when I say this, Poltergeist is genuinely easier than Providence. I saw that the Celestial Reaper wasn't doing too much damage. How they massacred my boy. So I tried the Elemental Disc instead, which didn't take me long to notice. Just like the Samsara Slicer, the Elemental Disc is useless. I wish I'd crafted Lunar Kunais at this point because they are amazing. I found that out of my current arsenal, the Regulus Riot was doing the most damage, plus it was the easiest to aim. It may have took slightly longer than it should have, but we got Polter to his second phase. Nothing too crazy here, just circle him and dash at the right times and you're good. After more circling than the moon orbiting our Earth, I took down the Poltergeist clone and now we was just left with this one guy. The damage was absolutely abysmal at this point due to his erratic movement, constantly phasing inside of blocks, but we eventually got him low enough that I thought it would be funny to finish him off with my Asgard's Valor, which I inevitably succeeded with but ended up dying in the process. Yeah, that's fine, I'll just come back and get my loot. Wait, where's my loot? It literally spawned right on this very platform, but now it's missing. I guess the game really doesn't want me to sequence break. In that case then, I suppose we'll just move on to Providence. Now, I am terribly sorry my shigs, but I may or may not have forgotten to record for like 10 minutes. But do not worry, all I obtained was just a couple weapons. Namely, the Utensil Poker, which is okay, the Alpha Virus, which is poo, and the Lunar Kunai, which is, well, I'll just demonstrate it on the Profane Guardians. I remember this weapon being absolutely phenomenal in my last stealth playthrough, and let's just say, it still holds up perfectly fine to this day. The Stealth Strike throws out 9 supercharged kunai, which aggressively home in and explode on hit. Basically just Stellar Knives 2.0. We took out the first Guardian with no struggle whatsoever. However, I forgot how to dodge for approximately 2 seconds. But all is fine though. Profane Guardians born after 1993 can't cook. All they know is throw rocks, dash, eat hot chip, and lie. Now for the final Guardian, this guy essentially just acts like a mini Providence. He'll dash towards you like a freight train, shoot out some oscillating profane crystals, I'm not even sure what the actual name for these is though, then lob these big ass fireballs at you, which I'm not even sure how you're meant to dodge legitimately, so I just rod of Discord away from them. And with one final adrenaline fueled stealth powered blow, we take him down. Now, he does actually have some pretty cool drops, namely the summon for the next boss. Yep, it was time to move along straight to Providence, who, for me at least, is actually harder than Poltergeist. But it's the non-linearity in progression that makes this mod fun though, as it would be a bit dull if you just went in a straight line in terms of progression. Welcome back to the challenge where we play this game mostly normally, but I just waffle about stuff. But nah, the amount of comments that are on my first video that were just like, me beating Calamity using an intended mechanic! Bro, just you clicked on the video for a reason. Maybe if you were funny enough you would have gotten a reply, but you guys are a dime a dozen. This isn't a challenge, stealth strikes are an intended mechanic of the game! Okay, anyways, we have Providence at half of her HP now. Things are going great. Except they're not. So I spawned her right back in. It is kind of hard to see her projectiles in the snow biome, but in all honesty it doesn't affect us too much. Most of her attacks can be easily dodged by running away, especially this shard attack which you can just dodge by moving slowly. The main skill test of this fight is this circular barrage of stars, which can be pretty hard to dodge, especially in the later phases, but isn't too bad. And is pretty good practice for Yaren as well. We was getting closer and closer to actually beating her. The Lunar Kunais are insane, man. She performs one more final attack to try and stop me, and I did actually get hit once, which was pretty scary, but In the end, we defeated her. It would be pretty neat if every boss had such a cool death animation. And there we go, we obtained our first post-Moonlord treasure bag alongside some Elysian wings. Inside the treasure bag we got absolutely nothing, but the Divine Geos can craft some pretty neat rogue items, so I'll happily take them. The first one on my mind being the Shattered Sun, a direct upgrade to the Radiant Star, which is an upgrade to the Prismaline, which is an upgrade to the Crystalline. Oh, and yeah, we've been so busy focusing on bosses in this playthrough that the corruption spreaded to my house. So I fought fire with fire and just spread the halo. You probably already noticed in the background, but the Shattered Sun stealth strike is amazing, firing an additional volley of homing daggers from the player when the original ones hit enemies. Real quick, why are we in this? You are kidding me. We just killed Providence, another boss already. Well, stealth strikes are pretty overpowered, so let's test them out on one of the next bosses and see how they fare up against it. The Shattered Sun was doing an absolutely ludicrous job against the first phase, locking onto that tail like nothing else. Before long, we'd gotten him to a second phase in which I tried out a couple weapons. The Shattered Sun seemed to be the best option at the moment though. If we had some good piercing weapons, we definitely would be doing more damage, but this is the best I have right now. I'll be honest, there really isn't too much to say about this fight, but I got some good hits in with the adrenaline. We'd reached the phase where he full boxes you with these tornadoes for whatever reason, and we ended up actually losing to the Stormweaver. That's kind of sad. Well, we had the Elysian wings and we needed the Elysian Aegis, and oh no! Take me, sweet death! As I was saying, we still needed the Elysian Aegis, so I went to fight Providence in the underworld. The Lunar Kunai definitely had a higher DPS in this fight, but it was kind of hard to hit her in the underworld as it didn't pierce through blocks, so I ended up using the Shattered Sun for the most part. And turns out, fighting her in the underworld isn't actually too easy. I would take the laser any day over that stupid crystal thing. I guess there is another boss we can take on instead of Providence, that being Cygnus. Good old Cygnus. No matter what class I am playing, no matter what challenge I'm doing, he always gets completely obliterated in any playthrough I do. And Stealth Strikes Only is absolutely no exception. The Lunar Kunais really are just the Stellar Knives 2.0. I'll admit, in concept, Cygnus is a really interesting boss, and his attacks are pretty fun too, but they can be mostly dodged by circling him, and then just ram dashing through Cygnus himself. Trust me, I have a very interesting challenge idea after this, something nobody's ever done. Anyways, we open up our treasure bag and obtain the one rogue weapon that Cygnus drops, the Cosmic Kunai. Doesn't particularly seem like a good stealth weapon, but I'll keep it in my arsenal nonetheless. Spoiler alert! I still can't take down Providence. Well, that's okay, the Asgard's valor will more than suffice for now. Let's go try the Stormweaver again. I found that the Lunar Kunai was actually more damaging than the Shattered Sun. I was getting him pretty low, but I'm really questioning my life decisions after that hit. And to rub salt in the wound, the electrified debuff finished me off. And I still can't beat Providence. Well, it just really wasn't my day today. But I still wanted to try one more boss before I got off. This boss. Where do I even begin? Look at that, I've been hit already. Well, maybe he's not as hard as he used to be. Maybe I've grown. Nope. Still the same old boss that I've fought multiple hundreds of times. If you hadn't figured things out already, Ceaseless Void is my least favorite boss in the entire mod. I try and voice my very legitimate complaints on the Calamity no-hit Discord server, and I just get told, get good, bro, this boss is easy. Well, playing the victim gets you absolutely nowhere in life, so I'm gonna take matters into my own hands and I'm gonna destroy this boss with my stealth strikes. Believe it or not, I was actually getting pretty far into the fight, never mind. It's the dark energies that just come out of nowhere and snipe you, is what I would say if I was a loser. But I'm going to beat this guy, no matter what. If my current weapons aren't doing enough damage, I'll just get some new weapons. If my armor isn't holding up too well, I'll just craft a new set. And if my skill is the issue at play here, then I will practice night and day. Until I beat this guy. Yeah, I think I'm gonna try again tomorrow. So, after a peaceful night's rest, I decided for this session that I wanted to focus on some upgrades. Defeating Providence gives a big hefty buff to the Ravager, and also makes him drop Bloodstone. Not something we need in particular right now, but it becomes pretty important after we defeat Poltergeist. As you'd probably expect, the fight was about as eventful as Valentine's Day for me. Don't worry guys, we're married to the grind. We got him to his second phase, aka the run in a straight line phase. While it took us a while to get him this low, we eventually took him down, and obtained our bloodstone from the necromantic geode. With that, I crafted as many bloodstone cores as I could, and then we made the blood-soaked crasher, an upgrade to the crush saw crasher. Now if you've seen the previous episode of this playthrough, you will know how stupidly, utterly, goofily overpowered that thing was. Anyways, I decided now would be the perfect time to finally upgrade our health. And of course, shout out to Agente189 for pointing that out. In most of my playthroughs, I literally forget until I beat Yaren. Well, we mined up a lifetime supply of planty mush, maxed out our life fruits, we consumed the blood orange, ran out of living shards to obtain the miracle fruit, kindly asked Plantera for some more living shards, then we consumed the miracle fruit. At this point in progression, there's also the elderberry which we can obtain, but it requires Eula Bloom. So I thought we'd kill 2 twins with 1 mega shark here. We'd obtain all the Eula Bloom we could ever possibly need and get the next life upgrade too. I magic mirrored home. Wait, you weren't supposed to keep this clip here. With the ore we mined, we could craft 47 Eula Bloom bars, which was enough for the elderberry, the Tarragon armor, and then some. Speaking of armor, I compared the new Tarragon armor to my current Empyrean armor, and while the Tarragon armor was definitely the more tanky and defensive choice, I still preferred the Empyrean armor as it just dealt more damage. Now there was a weapon in particular that I saw I could craft with Eula Bloom that tickled my fancy, let's just say that. But to craft it though, I need to decrypt a bunch of schematics which I'd been neglecting for the entire playthrough. But if we wanted to fight Drayden later on, we'd need to do it, so I guess now's the perfect time. Oh yeah, and do not forget to place down your power cell factories. I made that mistake once, I had to wait hours. I snuck in a cheeky little Providence fight while we was waiting for the Planetoid schematic, and I obtained the Molten Amputator. Next up was the Jungle schematic. While I was waiting for these to decrypt, I gave the Stormweaver a good few goes. Obviously to no avail, but it was worth a shot anyways. Also, I forgot to mention the Blood-Soaked Crasher wasn't very good, and neither was the Molten Amputator. Well, either way, the Jungle schematic was done, so next up was the Underworld schematic. I'm sorry Murasama, I gotta leave you there today. After a short wait, I'd finally decrypted the thing, and there it was. The Wave Pounder. I'd had no prior experience with this weapon, so I was bouncing up and down while waiting for this thing to charge. I felt like a kid on Christmas morning waiting for their parents to wake up. Okay, let's give this thing a whirl. Oh my goodness. We had seriously struck gold with this one. I could not wait to try it out on the Stormweaver. Yeah, I don't even need to voice over this. I think it speaks for itself. I'm not even kidding when I say this, the entire fight was over in 30 seconds. So, seeing how that fight went, you can probably guess what my next immediate thought was. I'm about to melt the Ceaseless Void like a bar of chocolate left out in the open on a hot summer day. And right I was, this thing was phenomenal for taking out the dark energies. For the actual boss however, I found that the Lunar Kunai was still the best option. Man, the Wave Pounder is just so satisfying. Looks like my weapons issue was solved, but not my skill issue. I got right back to it though, this time using the Profaned Partisan to damage the boss, a new weapon I crafted. With just a couple more stealth strikes from the Wave Pounder, I entered the final phase of this boss, which unfortunately is a completely objective test of skill. However, I'm goated. With the Ceaseless Void finally taken down, that was every single sentinel out of the way, and now there was 2 particular weapons on my mind. The Reality Rupture, an upgrade to the Spear of Destiny. Let's just say, this weapon definitely lives up to its name. Then there was the Sealed Singularity, an upgrade to the Dust Storm in a Bottle, which I found to be kind of underwhelming, albeit the name, but I still hadn't properly tested it yet. With nothing else to do, I crafted the Necroplasmic Beacon and challenged the Poltergeist, on tier this time. Obviously, seeing as how I defeated him as soon as I took down the Moonlord, you can probably predict the outcome of this fight. After switching between my weapons a few times, I found the Reality Rupture to be by far the best, while also being really fun to use as well. A weapon that requires skill? Never heard of that one before. Anyways, I quickly shredded the clone with some adrenaline, then gradually chipped away at the main Poltergeist's health with this awesome weapon. And before long, we'd taken him out, and we actually had our treasure bag this time. Sadly though, we didn't obtain the Ghoulish Gouger, which is the rogue weapon drop. Although in me and my friend's playthrough, he said the stealth strike on it is kind of underwhelming. Yeah, but screw it, I thought Poltergeist again just for the funnies. Shit. Well, one more attempt can't hurt. And there we go, we got it. I will get to testing the weapon eventually, and I'll also clear the graveyard at some point. But first there was something I wanted to craft. With the ruinous souls obtained from Poltergeist, we can now make the Blood Flare armor, which, unlike the Tarragon armor, is going to be actually better than our Empyrean armor, both in terms of damage and defense. And while there was also the Omega Blue armor, as far as I know that doesn't have any stealth on it. So while I was still feeling pretty ballsy, I decided to challenge the Old Duke, and at the same time test out the Ghoulish Gouger. Turns out my friend was right, the Stealth Strike does kind of suck, so I stuck to the Reality Rupture instead. Now, the Old Duke is definitely more of an endurance fight, and the fact that I hadn't crafted any new weapons will only amplify that, although the Reality Rupture wasn't actually half bad. The predictive dashes that this guy does can be a nuisance for newer players, but in all honesty, you just gotta dash a little bit later and then you're good. Keep in mind, at this point I'd forgotten to obtain the Elysian Aegis. Okay, so now he's in his teleportation phase, which I always get thrown off by. Like seriously, my instincts will just shatter and I'll get hit directly in the face. Although, we weren't actually doing too bad, I'm surprised, we could probably take him down. Probably. Well, I'm not even mad, I still haven't upgraded my weapons yet, so that was the first thing I went ahead and did. Time to kill some fishies. Boom, there we go. So, we obtained the weapon that I came down here for, but I still wanted to get a bobbit hook, so I went to find some bobbit worms. I had very high hopes for the Valediction, as it's one of my favourite weapons in the mod, plus my friend said the Stealth Strike is very good. I'll be keeping you for later. Okay, bobbit worm located. First try. Perfect. Okay, let's actually try this boss properly this time. Just as my good friend had foretold, the Valediction Stealth Strike was truly incredible. The weapon itself would deal decent damage, but the Razorblade Typhoons summoned by the Stealth Strike were really the main selling point of this thing. They would just latch on and slowly shake him to death. This weapon was a whole lot more damaging and easier to use than the Spear of the Reality Rupture? I think that's what it's called. Well, we'd already gotten him further than we did in the first fight, and things didn't look like they were slowing down one bit. I do apologise in advance if my voice sounds a bit nasally. I am ever so slightly under the weather right now, but nothing serious, we move. I activated Adrenaline one last time, and pummeled this guy into a heap of porky remains. Not a bad fight at all if you ask me. Unfortunately though, we didn't actually get the rogue weapon, and we cannot be having that, so I summoned this boy right back in, and once again turned him into a pile of pork. And this time we actually got the rogue weapon, albeit not the rare 10% drop. Let's just say, I am not farming for that. I was once again feeling ballsy after taking down the Old Duke with relative ease, so I thought it would be fun to test out my weapons on the Devourer of Gods. Maybe I wasn't using the Toxicant Twister correctly, but I found the Valediction to be doing much more DPS. To my surprise, the Devourer of Gods wasn't completely wiping the floor with me, not yet at least. I've got to say, the Valediction really was the perfect tool for the job in this fight. The Razorblade Typhoons would just lock directly onto the head. Like, look at this, these things are latched on like my dog when he's eating something he shouldn't be. Anyways, the first phase isn't really anything too special. I took a couple stupid hits here and there, but we survived. However, it's not over yet. The Devourer of Gods pulls a Kaneki in Season 1, turns on Hacks mode and comes back stronger than ever before. This time charging at you much more aggressively, and pooping out these cosmic fireballs. Oh yeah, not to mention this jump scare of an attack. Bro, when you're on 1 HP and you see those telegraphs pop up out of nowhere, that's what separates the boys from the men. But dodging it completely flawlessly is one of the most gangster feelings a Terrarian can possibly obtain. Oh, and would you look at that, we've nearly taken this guy down on the first attempt. I'll admit this is probably mostly just luck, but still. Sulfex, you are onto something. There is kind of a cheat code with the second phase though. Just move in a figure 8 pattern and dash through his head whenever he comes near you. And if I can pull this off with the Asgard's Valor, you can definitely do this with the Elysian Aegis. This simple life hack that the Calamity devs don't want you to know allowed me to charge up Adrenaline once again and... well, I didn't mean to actually beat this guy. I guess now we fight Yaren? Well, by no means am I complaining, I'm hyped as shig right now. Sadly, we didn't get the rogue weapon, but still. There were some immediate upgrades I could make of the Cosmolite bars, one of which being the Executioner's Blade. More of a spam weapon than a stealth weapon, but the Stealth Strike does look pretty fun. We then bought the Venerated Locket from the Bandit, which increases rogue damage, clones your rogue projectiles and makes them fall from the sky, and summons Cosmolite knives from the player upon stealth strikes. Now, I'll be real, the Venerated Locket isn't actually that good, but I just wanted it because it's funny having projectiles come from the sky. This thing with the Executioner's Blade is truly something to behold. Anyways, we needed to gather the materials for Ascendant Spirit Essence, so we could go on a nice big crafting spree. And first up was Dark Sun Fragments, which drop from Solar Eclipse enemies. Before long, we'd obtain multiple hundreds of them, with which I used to make the Eclipses fall. The stealth strikes from this weapon can stick into enemies and summon falling spears from the sky, making this a great support weapon, but it seems like more of a single target thing. And surprisingly, I found the Wave Pounder to be much better for farming these events. Next up, we summoned the Frost Moon, from which enemies drop endothermic energy. Nothing too special happened here, got killed a few times. The Wave Pounder is just absolutely insane. With the endothermic energy we obtained, we crafted the hypothermia, however the stealth strike seemed a bit underwhelming, so I stuck to using my other weapons. Now for the final ingredient, Nightmare Fuel, which is dropped by Pumpkin Moon enemies. Once again, I just spammed the Wave Pounder a couple hundred times. I crafted the Penumbra, which, forgive me for being stubborn, but I honestly thought it was kind of awkward to use. Anyways, now we can obtain Ascendant Spirit Essences, we can now craft the endgame rogue accessories. The first of which being the Nanotech, which is geared more towards spam players but still has some very good stealth effects. And the second one being much easier to craft, the Eclipse Mirror, a combination of the Abyssal Mirror and the Dark Matter Sheath. This one being catered to stealth players obviously. With the remaining accessory slots I'd freed up, I put on the Ethereal Extorter and the Nebulous Core. Then we proceeded to challenge the Devourer of Gods once again, as we were going to be needing some more Cosmolite bars for the Godslayer armor. You'd think that with these new accessory and weapon upgrades that the Devourer would be a piece of cake. Yeah, it just wasn't my day today, man. Okay, second time's the charm, third time's, fourth time's the charm. Fifth time's the charm, let's go boy. That took quite a bit longer than it should have, let's just say that. But we've done it now, it's out of the way. Now we can make the Asgardian Aegis, and most importantly of all, the God Slayer armor. Oh, how I've missed you, God Slayer Dash. I still wanted to get the Eradicator though, so I tried the Devour. I am so Okay, quick side note, when did they actually make it possible to summon him anywhere? I do remember him being called Yaren the Jungle Dragon. Not complaining at all, I just thought it was peculiar. Anyways, I wasn't properly warmed up today, so I was getting my ankles broken. I did at least manage to claw through his first phase, which isn't too bad, but it didn't take too long for that to all come crashing down. I decided that I'd replace the Venerated Locket as the projectiles from the sky were kind of throwing me off, and let's be real, it wasn't doing too much more damage. I then made the Silver Wings, which is the best possible wing set you can obtain at this point in progression. Then I summoned him. Okay, this rain is getting really annoying, I'm gonna turn that off. Rain, go away, come again another day. As I was saying, I summoned Yaren back in for another attempt. I found the Eclipse's Fall to be the most effective weapon against him, as it dealt high damage, it was very accurate, and just like the Stellar Knives, it would never give me up nor let me down. There were no more upgrades I could make at this point, so my one and only goal was to defeat Yaren. Wait, what's happening? Why is there epic music in the background? What is this, like the anime MC's special moment? Am I gonna have some kind of power up? Yo, wait, actually, this kind of slaps. Who made this? Wait, really? You're telling me a Terraria player made this? Man, this guy must never go outside. Well, I can't exactly say I expected Yaren to go down this quickly. I guess the Eclipse's fall just really is that overpowered. I open the treasure bag and of course we get the rare 10% magic weapon and not the rogue weapon. I then head over to the bandit who now sells the dragon scale since we defeated Yaren, which creates homing fireballs as your rogue weapons travel, makes stealth strikes spawn in tornadoes, and increases your max run speed and acceleration by 10%. Not a bad accessory. However, I still wanted one of Yaren's rogue weapons, the Wrath Wing. Will I be able to defeat Let's try. I think I'm gonna go and get some rest. So I came back the very next day with the new goal of mining as much auric ore as possible. It feels a bit surreal that we're near the endgame already. Don't worry though, I'll be obtaining every endgame rogue weapon and I'll be attempting the boss rush. Anyways, with a grand total of 720 auric ore, we crafted it all up into bars. I made the Seraphim, the final upgrade to the crystalline. I've got to say this weapon does have a pretty awesome looking stealth strike, so we'll see what we can do with this thing. Next up I made the Seared Pan, an upgrade to the utensil poker. At the time I didn't exactly have the highest hopes for this weapon, but we hadn't properly tested it out yet, so we'll find out soon enough. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for, the final armor upgrade we can make in this series. The Auric Tesla armor. And it still has the Godslayer dash, let's go! There was another weapon I had my eyes set on, the Dynamic Pursuer, an upgrade to the best weapon in the entire game, the Tracking Disc. But it requires the Eradicator dropped from the Devourer of Gods, so I challenged him once again. And yeah, don't worry, I only nearly died this time. And on the first attempt, we got what we was looking for. And now the Dynamic Pursuer was in our hands. But they never charge these things before they give them to you. I decided to be productive and mine some auric ore while I waited for that thing to charge. With the auric ore we mined, I crafted the Auric Quantum Calling Cell. Man, that's such a nice word to say. Oh yeah, nearly forgot to take this thing off charge. So with our maxed out codebreaker, we FaceTime Drayden. He gives us a choice out of 3 different mechs, and I picked the only correct choice. Ares. Welcome to the most awesomely designed boss in this entire mod, but with some of the worst execution I've ever seen. No hate though, I love the Calamity Mod to bits, but this is the biggest attack spam boss I've ever seen. Especially the phase of all 3, but you can just go horizontally for that one. Anyways, we made pretty short work of the first phase and now we move on to the twins and Thanos. For this phase, I found the Dynamic Pursuer to be the most consistent in damage. I found to dodge most of the attacks in this phase you just have to fly up and down in a zigzag pattern. Well, at least for the twins, Thanos' lasers will just snipe you out of nowhere. I didn't realize at the time, but the Dynamic Pursuer was doing a ton of damage to the Destroyer, so we was in the Chaos phase already. This one seems like the scariest on paper, but literally just fly perfectly horizontally, Rod of Discord through the laser war attack, and you're good. Except you're not. Yeah, screw it, let's just try again, that was probably just bad luck. This time I was in a good position for the Chaos phase, so I could fly perfectly horizontally. And I found the Seared Pan to actually be doing more damage. At least 4 arrows in the twins. Okay, so now we've arrived at, in my opinion, the hardest phase in the entire fight. Ares on his own. The only saving grace of this phase is this awesome attack. Except his limbs will just shoot everything at you. Let's just keep trying. Yeah, we need to make some more preparations. First of all, I made the final life upgrade, the Dragon Fruit, granting us an extra 25 max HP. Then, instead of actually changing our gear up, I made the impulse decision of, let's fight the Twin Calamitath. Well, out of the 2 endgame bosses, Escal is definitely the one I'm better at by far. But will we be able to defeat her as we are right now? So, I kind of shit myself for the Brimstone Hearts phase, as I didn't know what weapon would actually be the best for it. I found the Seraphim to be the most efficient at taking out the Brimstone Hearts. Not that it was a good option, it was just the best out of the options we had. Luckily, the cow herself doesn't attack you too much in that phase, so before we knew it, we could actually start the fight. From the Exos fight, I knew that the Seared Pan was going to be the best option against the cow. I did try some of my other weapons too, but I found that by far the Pan was the best option. Second, Bullet Hell. Well, actually, not even gonna lie, the Bullet Hells are the easiest part of this fight by far. It's like a breather. Didn't mean to flex on ya, but that's just kinda the truth. Anyways, now for the second phase and probably the most uneventful phase of this fight. It is pretty much just the first phase again, and it was over before it even properly started. Now we're in the third bullet hell, a decent chunk harder than the second one, but if you can actually learn how to dodge it, it is so much fun. Seriously, it's the most satisfying feeling ever. Anyways, now the phase that takes Calamity from being my favourite boss in the mod to probably barely even in the top 5. And yeah, I kinda wasted my adrenaline there, I know. The brothers phase. No words can describe how much I hate this phase. I could no-hit the entire Escal fight, but I'll get to this phase and I'll just die immediately. Sometimes I'll go through it flawlessly, honestly it's just luck dependent really. Or maybe I'm just not that good at the game. I made it back once again to the brothers phase with relative ease, this time using the dynamic pursuer so I could focus more on dodging. And yeah, what? This is actually working? Would you look at that, we'd actually taken one of them down. Just got to lock in on this one and there we go, we've done it. And there we go, now it's time to demolish the rest of the... Yeah, I'm gonna take a break. As much as I love dealing a shig ton of damage, the glass cannon build wasn't really working for us at the moment. Okay, I'm leaving this one in, this was pretty funny. I realised now would be a great time to go and obtain that rogue weapon from Yaren. Can't be too hard, right? Who would win? Big ass dragon or frying pan? We open our treasure bag and bausch, there we go. I gave the Wrathwing a quick test drive on the Exos, and while it didn't do as much damage as the pan, it was homing and a lot easier to use. Okay, so at this point I decided to stop lying to myself. I seriously needed the survivability. The glass cannon just wasn't working anymore. I converted to the dark side and reforged all my accessories from silent to warding. Then I received a small loan of 35 platinum from the bandit. You may be wondering, why are you fighting Ravager? Isn't he like a pre-Moon Lord? Well, you would be correct, but there is a little something we needed from him. We'd ran out of bloodstones, so I needed to make some more for a certain accessory. The Chalice of the Blood God, which we replaced the Ethereal Extorter with. Probably the single best survivability accessory in the entire game. Increasing your max health by 25%, making your potions heal you by an extra 25%, decreasing the potion cooldown by 25%, and giving you an extra 2 HP per second life regen. Oh yeah, and it converts your damage taken into a whole bleed mechanic, which is like, yeah. Looks like that still wasn't enough though. Well, let's give the Exos one more attempt, then I'll head off for the day. For this attempt, I mainly used the Wrathwing instead of the pan, so I could focus more on actually dodging the attacks. Then, of course, once we get to the Chaos phase, I switch back to the pan. The fight was moving at a considerably slower pace, considering we had less stealth regen now. But in all honesty, the defense more than made up for it, especially when we got to this guy's final phase. I could tank so many more stupid hits now without having to worry, and for the first time, we actually took this guy down. Now moving on to Thanos, after switching between a few weapons, I found the Dynamic Pursuer to be doing the most damage to him. Eventually the twins came back. Now I usually take them down first, so I switched back to the Wrathwing and focus entirely on them. After somehow not getting hit after doing this, Thanos dips out, leaving us with just the twins now. They do have special attacks this time, however the green guy almost never hits you, and for the orange guy you can just use his Slime Mount or Rod of Discord through the laser. With this tactic we were barely getting hit at all, with our defense being an extra safety net. Now with Ares and the twins taken down, we were left with the final mech. Now this guy can be an absolute pain in the shig if you don't know what you're doing. Especially this attack right here, but you just gotta kinda go like in the middle of him and then... well, he'll coil around you, but you should be perfectly fine. I switched to the Seraphim here as I thought it was actually doing more DPS. I'll admit if we was using the Dynamic Pursuer he would be gone already, but this was tense. This was gonna be a close fight. Man, when he coils around you like that, but there we go. We'd taken him down. My heart was beating at like 20 shigs per second. Seriously, I did not expect to win against this guy so quickly, but maybe I'm doubting myself, maybe I am just that cracked. Anyways, with the defeat of the Exos, we obtained some inventory filler, a new rogue weapon, and most importantly of all, Exo Prisms. Oh yeah, and I nearly forgot about the Draiden's Heart as well, that thing is phenomenal. So I replaced my Dragon Scales with the Draiden's Heart, tested out the new Refraction Rotor we got from the Exos. It's not that good. The Wrathwing does more damage, and it's homing. For all this crafting we were about to do, we were going to need some more Ascendant Spirit Essences, so I grinded the Pumpkin Moon, Frost Moon, and Solar Eclipse all over again. We then crafted the Draiden's Forge, the culmination of every single crafting bench we've previously obtained. And now with that in our hands we can synthesize some miracle matter, and craft our first Exo tier weapon, the Supernova. If you have a keen eye, you'll have noticed that this was the weapon we used in the intro for the very first video. Man, never gets old, does it? Anyways, there was another rogue weapon we could create. All of you OG Calamity players will remember this one, the Celestus. I used to think this thing was so cool back in the day, and it still is to be fair. So with our Draiden's heart equipped and the 2 new exo weapons, I guess we was finally ready to take on Supreme Calamity. A rule of thumb for Calamity's endgame: if you can take down the exos, then you are more than prepared to take on Escal. Well, not exactly, I'm still probably gonna get shigged, but seriously, the Draiden's heart is so OP, it should make it a developer item. Anyways, the Celestus was dealing immaculate damage to Escal, and the Supernova was absolutely shredding the Brimstone hearts. Seriously, this thing's range is probably the entire map. We'd arrived at the 3rd bullet hell. I was on 2 hearts, I'd already used up my revive, and what's this? Ah, the Draiden's heart. It swaps out adrenaline for nanomachines, and once the nanomachines are full, they will heal you by like 300 health. It's insane. Plus, nanomachines don't reset when you get hit, they only stop charging for 1 second. Now for the Dreadful Brothers phase. Because of the Supernova's phenomenal range, it was hitting both of them at once, which, luckily for us, made very short work of the pair. Now for the 4th bullet hell. This is actually the first time we've made it to this point, and not gonna lie, I was slightly scared. Calamity spawned in her Soul Seekers, who promptly got annihilated by the Supernova. Now we could damage her once again. We were crawling closer and closer to the end of this fight. Now it was time for the final test of skill in this playthrough, the 5th and final bullet hell. A catastrophic combination of the big donut, brimstone hell blasts, the things that move from left to right, and those bouncy things. And there we go. I may have took a few hits, but we survived. Now to demonstrate the power of the Supernova on these Brimstone hearts. Well, the Chicken Cannon or Dragon's Rage would be better, but there we go, now we can damage her again. But I was about to die. My revive was on cooldown, I was on just 2 hearts. If I got hit even once, the fight would be over. But there we go. Supreme Calamity stops fighting and drops a bunch of lore. Then explodes into a bunch of loot and reincarnates into a town NPC. With our victory against Supreme Calamity, we have beat the entire game using only stealth strikes. Ah, sweet, and we even got the rogue weapon too. If anyone ever asks the question, is it possible to beat the Calamity mod using only stealth strikes? Tell them yes. Reg W conquered the entire game using only stealth strikes, a mechanic implemented by the Calamity mod alongside rogue weapons. Well, our mission here was finally complete. But the story doesn't end just yet. Now that we can say we've officially beat the game, it was time to have some fun. Supreme Calamity drops a material called Ashes of Annihilation, which when combined with exoprisms and auric bars, create shadow spec bars. Used to craft only the finest tier of weapons, armor and accessories in the entire game. And the 2 rogue weapons we can make with shadow spec bars are no exception, the first of which being the Nano Black Reaper. The Stealth Strike causes the scythe to make homing after images instead of energy blades, which will aggressively lock onto enemies and completely annihilate anything in their path. And now for the final rogue weapon we're gonna craft, the Scarlet Devil. A slow firing but ludicrously powerful javelin. The Stealth Strike causes it to, on enemy hits, explode into a big star of balls? Yeah. Either way, look at the damage on this thing. I tried the Nano Black Reaper as well and that was hitting very similar numbers. Okay, let's see how quickly we can finish off arrows. I hope you've got a stopwatch nearby. Just 2 hits from the Scarlet Devil turned him into a pile of scrap. Yeah, needless to say, we low-diffed the rest of them. Okay, that was pretty fun and all, but remember the Terminus we picked up earlier in this video? We can now summon in the Boss Rush, the actual final challenge of Calamity, albeit not very balanced. Although it was pretty fun testing out all the endgame weapons. From what I noticed so far, the Nano Black Reaper was much easier to aim, but the Scarlet Devil did significantly higher damage. After a few bosses, the Boss Rush does get kind of boring, so let's skip to the only hard boss in this rush. Supreme Calamity. I don't know what the devs were smoking when they made this, but this is just awful. Surprisingly, I made it to the Soul Seeker phase, albeit with a mostly defensive loadout. But even then, that just wasn't enough. Well, yeah, I was like, screw this. I decided to make the highest DPS loadout possible. A combination of rogue accessories throughout the entire game. Reforged Auto Silence, of course. Why don't we give this a little test drive on the Devourer of Gods? After all, we don't even need wings since we've got the Exo Chair. While the Scarlet Devil was pretty good, the Nano Black Reaper somehow took out his second phase in 5 seconds. Yeah, you know what, actually, we can make this even better with just a little bit of this. Then we just make sure this is turned on, and what in the ever-loving shig? This is incredible. Okay, let's do Yaren, here we go. Yeah, something tells me this is a bit OP. Okay, then what about the exos? And oh no, my game's gonna crash. Oh no. Well, I think we've seen enough of that. So you've made it all the way to the end of this movie. Maybe you skipped ahead, maybe you watched the entire thing. Thank you very much for watching, as always. The mods I used, the music I've used in this video, and my Discord server will all be in the description. I hope you enjoyed this cinematic masterpiece. Don't forget to make a cup of tea, and have a great day.